Skill-Based Art, a learning resource for art students and artist teachers. My name is Emilio Longo and I'm the founder and director of Skill-Based Art. Today I'd like to welcome you to the Victorian Art Society located on Albert Street in Melbourne. I'm joined today by the lovely Eileen Mackley, who's the current president of the Victorian Art Society. Eileen, thank you very much for having me today. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you, Emilio. You're most welcome.
So Eileen, tell me a little bit about the history of this wonderful institution and why it's such an important part of the history of Australian art.
Yeah, well, it's terribly important, and I think that this is an area here that many people are so aware of the Heidelberg Group. Mm-hmm. And of course this was their home, this was their base.
Sure.
And the history that's in this building is amazing. Mm-hmm. And we're very proud to be able to inform people of the history. It was built, really, the artists were looking for a home and gallery space so they could exhibit. The artists of those days were just exhibiting in smaller rooms in downtown. Sure. And there wasn't a lot available, as you could imagine, going back to the early 1870s. The organisation, of course, started to develop very quickly once the building was erected. But before that time, to get their base, they put in an application to government for Crown land. Mm-hmm. And this is on Eastern Hill, mm-hmm. And there's a lot of buildings here on Crown land because the city, there wasn't a lot of activity down in the city as far as cultural things, mm-hmm. Churches and whatever. And also, being on the top of the hill, there were it was clearer air, it was a bit grubby downtown. Mm-hmm. So this was a bit of a privilege for them to have been awarded this little block of land, but of course they didn't have any money. Sure. So being artists, artists never had any money. So eventually the land was, they said they could only build a little building, which they built the little studio at the back, which is a bluestone building. And I think the lighting was very poor. It doesn't look as though I think it was a front door and a window. And from then on, they had to develop the whole building. They had to raise the monies, get the funds in, get the membership up. And I was reading at one stage, it's amusing, you look at the old history, and they had a lot of members, but they didn't all pay their subscriptions. In those days. Anyway, they had fancy dress balls and all sorts of things. Sure. They were all supportive, very supportive. And eventually they took the roof off the little building, mm-hmm. bluestone building, which is now a studio, and built this lovely building. Mm-hmm. But it's only just a matter of 4 years ago that we realised that the building wasn't going to last. Sure. Because it was deteriorating so quickly. And we were having a very important meeting one day in the members' room, and the water was running down the inside wall. So we thought, well, that's it. We just have to sort of, take the bull by the horns and get on with it. So first thing, of course, was to raise the money. Mm-hmm. But that's sort of what's led on. But what has happened over the years is it's a building for artists. Mm-hmm. It's a membership based. We have about 500 artists here who use it regularly. Exhibitions are regular for members. When we're not using the space for our own membership, we hire the space. Sure. And that's where some of our income comes from. Sure. We have a very active school using the little studio, and it's part of our income, mm-hmm. and also through the sale of paintings. Sure. It always has been a member-based society, so that's where we rely on volunteers. Absolutely. So you're not-for-profit and you're also registered as a charity as well. We are a charity, and of course now it's a Heritage National Trust building. Absolutely, that's fantastic. So this building itself is listed under National Trust. So what we've actually done was saving the building. We've saved one of Melbourne's little icons, that could have disappeared. Lovely. Very quickly. It's fantastic. But we've got all that history, and we'd love to share it with everybody.
Sure, and you recently celebrated your 150th
Yes,
anniversary, I
we did.
understand.
We did, and that was great. We've done a little book, which is good, on the society. Because every year we have an exhibition for our Artist of the Year. So all of our prominent artists put their works forward, and so that gives them the opportunity to sort of come out and bring their work out.
Sure. Fantastic. Well, thank you for explaining that, Eileen. Let's take a look around.
Yes, we will. Okay.
I've noticed there are a few plaques around the society on the walls and such. Tell me about this one.
This is one of the most important plaques we have, and I'm always very happy to come and explain it to people, because it's where people sort of come in and they say, well, we've got this Victorian Society of Fine Arts and Academy and Australian Artists Association. What actually happened, there were only a few people very early in 1856 who decided that Melbourne was developing and it needed an art society, some representative art, mainly to educate the people. That was the thing to do. You had to learn these finer skills. That didn't really go very far. But the Victorian Academy of Arts, and that was established before the Artists Association. Now, what happened there was this Australian Artists Association were mainly represented by the Heidelberg group of painters, because they didn't want to be associated with a lot of these people, because a lot of them were not always professional artists. But eventually they decided that it wasn't going to work and they needed each other, so the two groups amalgamated. And this created the Victorian Artists Society. So the memorandum of the articles was scripted and developed and approved in 1870. They still didn't have a building, but they had the little building at the back, which we talked about when we were out there, and that was built, the little building was built on Crown land from the government.
So the little buildings where the studio's located?
Yes, so it was just one little building at the back of the block, and so eventually, once this started, they went out to raise money to build what we have today. A little building, but the studio is still there, and all they did was they took the roof off and went over the top.
I see, right,
so it's been absorbed into the main building.
Sure.
So the building was finally finished in 1892, and since then it's had many artists have gone through it, which is interesting. And I'd like to talk about the presidents next of the society, because that gives you some idea of the valuable artists that we had here and the value of the work that now is displayed at the National Gallery and in important places throughout Australia.
Great. Well, let's take a look at that plaque with the presidents on it. So Eileen, here we are in front of the past presidents plaque. So I can see you've got presidents that go right back until 1875, even 1870 there. So tell me a little bit about the history of the presidents.
Well, in 1870, of course, Mr. Campbell, he was the first president. So that's when we really started. Chester Earl, rather. Mr. Payton, now he was quite a prominent man. John Mather, he was a great artist. John Ford Patterson. Now we've actually still got one of his paintings in our collection. So we're very fortunate about that, because we hadn't collected a lot of the early artists' work. Fred McCubbin, which is sort of, most people know Fred and his work. Walter Withers. John Mather came back again, and Fred came back again. And as we go through all these wonderful artists who took the helm and they directed the society to what it is today. Max Meldrum, he was very controversial, because he would be one that would be out there in that studio, and he would be telling everybody that this is the way you had to paint. And he was very, very strong in his beliefs and different things. And there was a little bit of disturbance, because he was on council, of course, as you say, he was president for a very short time, and I think that he moved over quite quickly, or somebody moved him over. Douglas Richardson, great artists. John Longford, great artist. Montford, and now Lewis McCubbin, he was Fred's son. So that's interesting. John Roll, but if you go look up all these artists, you'll find all their names on the website.
Sure.
They're great. Orlando Dutton, he's another sculptor. It's interesting that the sculptors did come in. Frater, we talked about him as we came through.
Of course.
He was a very strong man and pushed very hard. When we got down here to Stanley Hammond and Heffernan, the building was starting to decay slightly, and they decided that they had to really save a lot of things, and this is when they put in a lot of storerooms, which we've taken out today. And they didn't really have a lot of money, so the money was a bit short through this era here, but it started to come back again. Connie Walker and Bill Harding, Kath Ballard, Paul McDonald Smith, we're getting down to these are guys now who are still around. Paul's still teaching here. John Hunt, he was a great artist. Noel Waite, Gregory Smith, he's still teaching here, lovely artist.
Absolutely.
And then Mrs. Mackley.
There's you.
Yes.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Now we can see that we've got the Stanley Hammond, obviously you've got one of the galleries named after him, and William Frater also got a gallery named after him. Yes. Fantastic.
So this speaks for itself, the quality of people that have been, in the organisation.
So in regards to history, you can see the history right here. So the wall goes right back to 1870.
So they pick out some of these, and these were the Heidelberg people as well.
Sure.
But then going right back, if I'm right, and Fred McCubbin, I know that he also taught at the National School. So they had to make a living, and they taught him a bit other things.
So that's at the National Gallery School?
That's the Gallery School,
right.
Yes.
And did many of the artists that were affiliated with the National Gallery School come around to the Victorian Art Society?
Oh, most of them.
Yeah.
After they'd finished the school, yeah.
Sure.
Most of them.
Okay.
Yeah, of that era, yeah.
Lovely.
Yeah. Where did they go? Once they learned to paint.
Straight over to the Victorian Art Society.
They had to come here, yeah. So,
fantastic.
So that was it, yeah. It's wonderful.
Great. Now, Eileen, I understand that the original design for the Victorian Art Society building, there was actually a competition that was set up, and it came down to one artist that actually had won the architectural prize based on their drawings. And those drawings are right here displayed in the Victorian Art Society. Can you tell me a little bit about those, please?
Well, I can tell you a little bit about it, but I think we're very fortunate to have the images still, which is lovely. So this competition was won by Richard Spate, an architect, and he designed what the brief was. They said they wanted a grand structure, so that's their grand structure that he designed, and of course it had to be just for galleries, showing works, and also a place for educating people on art. And that was part of That was part of the memorandum that was written in the first place.
Sure.
So that's what he had to provide. Not much happened in the galleries downstairs, so the gallery space was all upstairs, which was good. And not removing the little studio room, they just took the roof off and went over the top.
Sure.
So here we have this lovely.
So they basically incorporated the studio into the building itself.
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
Very nice.
Yeah. So that's what it is today. The building covered the little studio. So they took the roof off the studio, which would be up here. And this is the new room on the top. The ground floor was on those days, you know, we went in and there was a library. And then we had the ladies' room. Actually, I can't see that. Oh, I can't see. Secretary's office, ladies' room, gentleman's room. Now, along here was the ladies' toilets and the urinals for the men. So they went out that way and the ladies went out that way. So it was interesting the way that things have changed completely. Stairwell is in exactly the same place. So we really, in our renovation, have worked on this plan, the same layout, and we've taken things back. We have the balcony, of course, upstairs, and this is just delightful to think that we could actually achieve so much in restoring the building. The only thing we haven't been able to do is replace the second chimney. We're missing one chimney, and Heritage have put it on our list to replace it, but I don't think we'll ever get round to replacing the chimney.
Sure.
So this is just an interesting point of the building. I'd like to now bring you into the Cato Gallery, which is one of our smaller galleries on the ground floor. The portraits here are from our permanent collection, and they've been painted some years ago. Beautiful art. The portraits, these two portraits that you can see here on this wall, were painted by two of our art teachers who are no longer with us, sadly. We have the painting of this gentleman in the red jacket. His name is Eileen Mackley, who's the subject. Now, Alan was painted by Shirley Vaughan. That is a painting of Shirley Vaughan. So Shirley painted Alan, and then Alan painted Shirley. I think that's a wonderful thing to have. I believe that these were both exhibited or entered into the Archibald exhibition. So that's quite lovely to have those in our collection. We also have over here a portrait of Stanley Hammond. Stanley Hammond was one of our presidents. He was a very progressive man, but he was also a wonderful sculptor. And many of Stanley's sculptures are seen around the city today. And he developed sculpture in the society. We've named one of our galleries after Stanley. So that's a lovely thing to have also. This little painted portrait here is of Mrs. Stevens. I don't know who she was, but it was painted by Norma Bull. Norma Bull was a wonderful artist, wartime artist, and she came, when she returned back to Australia, she set up a foundation and donated a lot of her work to various organisations. And so some of it, we have some of her work. We also have a trust fund of Norma Bull's, which is for our scholarships, which is an annual, biannual scholarship. The painting here, which I don't know whether we can get that one in view, is a painting of Alice Vale. So the Alice Vale portrait is actually, that's on at the moment. So it's lovely to have a portrait of Alice Vale. Walking through to the gallery, to the other room in this little complex, we now have portraits portraits of the Normal Ball. These are winners of the Normal Ball scholarship going through the years. The Normal Ball scholarship is an inquisitive scholarship, so that means that the paintings are then owned by the society. So we've got some lovely paintings here, and this is a lovely little portrait. And also this one, you can see the different styles, but they're nice portraits to have. And we also have a portrait of Connie Walker, who's an ex-period president. Okay, the room, many years ago, when it was hired out, the society, when it was first, the building was first built, needed an income. So these rooms were hired out to the Music Conservatorium, and they were here for many years. And Nellie Melba, a wonderful singer, she came in here and had her little group of students that she taught to sing. And then they would go upstairs and have concerts. She had a lovely little uniform that they all had to wear with a big M for Melba embroidered on the front. But she was well known around the society, and she was very friendly with some of the very early artists, the Streeters and the McCullens. We also have a plaque of Nellie's on the wall at the main entrance. So this is the history of this. Now, when the conservatorium left the building, they went to other rooms, and it was converted into a gallery. And the funds to allow us to do the conversion was donated by Mr. Cato, and that's why it's called the Cato Gallery. Thank you.
So Eileen, here we are in the Eileen Mackley Members Room in the Victorian Art Society. Can you tell me about this wonderful room? I'm looking around, I'm seeing some fantastic paintings on the walls, and we've got this lovely bookshelf behind us here. So what's the story with this room, and how does it relate to the Victorian Art Society? What's its place in the society?
This is a really nice cosy room. It was offices. We actually converted it back to a nice little room, cosy room for members to come and enjoy, meet their friends, have a cup of coffee, and also might like to take some time to read some of our art books. If anybody's doing research, there's a few little books there, which we're mainly collecting books which are from Australian artists. The walls are available for our artists to hang their work, and they can hang it for a price of $10 per painting for one fortnight.
Wow, that's quite cheap.
So it's good. It's a little service that we give to the members, so they can actually have a whole exhibition. Some of our artists will bring in all of their work and have their own little exhibition in this room, which is nice.
Very nice.
And that means that they get their work to be shown. It's always for sale, and they wouldn't get that in a city gallery.
Lovely.
So this is one of our services. We are here to service the artists.
Absolutely. Fantastic. It's quite a cosy little room, and so this is really the place where you could come once you've had a look at the work in the exhibitions and all the different galleries upstairs and downstairs. Come and just have a discussion with your friends and such.
That's right.
Very nice.
So we use it for little meetings and other little special occasions.
Lovely.
There you go. That's the members' room, the Eileen Mackley members' room.
Great.
Yes.
In the vast studio, lots of history in this particular environment, I understand, Eileen. So can you tell us a little bit about what goes on in here?
Oh, this is magic, isn't it?
It's lovely, it really is something special.
Yeah. It's a very special room. It's the first building that was put on the site of the land that was granted.
Sure.
It was the I think it started off then as the Academy, but as the change came through, it went to the Victorian Artists Society, of course. Now, they didn't have anywhere to hang their paintings, but they certainly did have a place to meet and to discuss art, and that's what they did in those days. They talked about art, they talked about the techniques, they talked about selling, and they talked about, you know, a lot of them painted outside, and that which is called plein air painting, and that's what a lot of the early artists really enjoyed doing. And the other thing was they enjoyed portraiture.
Yes.
So a lot of our lovely, you know, portraits that are actually hanging in the in Government House, which are in the National Gallery collection, they are hanging in the in Government House. They're big paintings, and they did big paintings because they had big houses.
Sure.
So
it makes sense.
Beautiful big paintings. So this room was a very important part in the very early days of the development of the Victorian Artists Society, and I think they also used to recite poetry and have nights which they call smoke nights.
Absolutely.
And I think they all sat around and smoked and
drank wine.
Whiskey or something.
Yeah.
Yes. So it was very important. Now it still has the original floor,
Sure.
which we've kept.
See all the lovely paint stains.
So you
A lot
can
of history
say
there.
yes, you could say you're walking on the boards that some of our lovely, you know, well, prominent artists, major artists.
So we're talking
very
Tom
good
Roberts,
artists. We
Hugh
are,
Ramsey.
yeah, Streeton and Withers, and a lot of those artists that they belong to the Heidelberg group.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, but although they painted out plein air in Heidelberg, where they also started up a school, they still had to have somewhere to exhibit their work.
Absolutely.
And that's when the pressure came on to build the building we have today.
That's lovely, isn't it?
Yes.
Such an important part of Australian art history.
It is art history for
Absolutely.
Australia, yes.
One thing I want to ask as well, Eileen, with the currently there's a consider class was previously in
Yes,
here, they
so
finished
this
it.
is-
So this is David Taylor, who's a great Australian watercolourist,
Yes.
who's got some of his work and his students' work set up around here. So how often would you have a workshop? How often do they rotate? Is it monthly?
Oh, we have summer workshops, and when we have school breaks, because our art school runs on a school term.
Right.
So we have little what we call workshops. Will last
Sure.
for 2 or 3 days.
Sure.
And this is what we have at the moment. And David is, as you explained, he's one of our greatest watercolourists in Victoria, and he comes to us every year and does this workshop.
That's fantastic.
Now, as soon as the school term starts, we will be back into regular classes, and they are back to back. This room is full all the time.
That's fantastic,
And
really.
yes.
It's something very unique when you think about the amount of contemporary areas, schools, workshops that are around in Melbourne and throughout Victoria as well. There are a lot of places where you can get that kind of contemporary art education.
Oh, yes,
but when it
there
comes
is.
back to a historical grounding in traditional tonal realist painting,
That's
there aren't very many places.
And this is becoming a little bit of a problem, because now we're having young people ringing and saying, well, I can't do what I want to at my university club course, and I don't want to do it online. I want to be with an artist teaching me my colours, and that's really what painting is. It's colours. If you don't get your colours right, your painting's no good.
Right.
It's basic, and you can see here from some of these lovely works that people are doing. I mean, it's great, and they're following through on David's instructions.
Absolutely.
We have a big range of classes, so we go right through from watercolours, oils, acrylics, drawing. We actually also do some sculpture. That's another thing which is it's lovely to do. Yes.
Yes. And with the particular plaster cast you got in the back corner of the studio there, so that's a great identifier of a traditional art school right there. If you see plaster casts in a studio, you know that usually it's has a lineage back to some kind of traditional art education. So are those casts, any of them originally from back in the 19th century, or have you replaced those?
No, they wouldn't.
You've replaced those, yeah.
No, they've been replaced. It's a pity we haven't got anything like that, but the plaster cast are used at most of the portrait teachers. They start you off on a black and white painting, so you get the tones. Yeah. So that's what the plaster classes are
there for. Yeah, so it's a standard traditional formation.
So a lot of it is traditional, but as you look through our program, we've got contemporary as well. We're actually opening up for digital art. We're not teaching it in the studio here, but anybody who does it can now exhibit in certain exhibitions.
Sure.
And our exhibitions our member exhibitions run right throughout the year. So if you're an artist or come here, you belong to the society, you have the right to exhibit your work.
That's fantastic.
In the exhibitions.
That's a great. It works out really well for the artist.
Yes. And you can actually exhibit, whereas probably it's a struggle to exhibit in a commercial gallery.
Oh yes.
So at least they can put their work up. But we've got some really good artists here, professional artists. You know, not only just people that want to come and do something they always long to do.
Sure.
It's good.
Definitely. Lovely. Well, thanks for showing us around the studio, Eileen. Appreciate that. We'll move on to another part of the gallery.
Yes. So we've moved now into what we call the McCubbin Gallery, which is a gallery around our stairwell. This gallery, because of the lighting, we use it mainly for watercolour paintings or anything that's under glass, because it has extra lighting coming through. This also is part of our permanent collection, all of these wonderful, watery or watercolours, which have been collected over the years. It's taking us to the Frater Gallery. The Frater Gallery, Mr. William Frater, he was one of our presidents. Great man, a Scottish gentleman, and very determined on getting things done. So we're very, very fortunate to have had his service and have him involved in the society. So this is the Frater Gallery, which I rather like because it can normally display lovely art. But as I say, this at the moment, this is just our permanent collection. It's not. None of this work is for sale. So it's a nice gallery. This gallery was named after Stanley Hammond, who was a wonderful sculptor and president, and he was a very, very active man in the society during his term. So this is a beautiful gallery, and it's the gallery where Nellie Melba, of course, brought her students up here to have concerts. The lovely arches here lead out to the balcony where we've just been. We've restored the galleries, so today we can we can actually house a lot of paintings in this particular gallery with a very easy hanging system, which doesn't take us too long to turn things over. Okay, so we might like to have a look at some of the paintings. In this room, in this gallery, we have one particular painting which was done by a woman called Elizabeth Parsons. Now, she was a very early artist, belonged to the society. She belonged to the academy, the early academy, which was then renamed the Victorian Artist Society. We have a little painting of hers over here, which was done of Daylesford in 1885, and she also painted with Louis Bouvelot, and he was one of the founding members of the academy, which, as I say, it then changed its name later on to the Victorian Artist Society. Can we like to move over to this painting now? Yes. It's very detailed, not the style that we see today, but it's Daylesford, and it's the river with the farmer with his cows, possibly taking them home to milk. It looks as though they've only have a small herd, and that would supply the family with milk and butter, and depicts the little building which would have been typical of those days, and not architecturally designed at all, but with a little lean-to on the outside. The trees are very detailed, but she's got a lovely light coming in here on this hillside here, which I don't know whether that's the big hill that you see in Daylesford when you first go in or not. I haven't had that analysed. So this is our oldest painting. All of these paintings in this room are from our permanent collection. So we don't take them out very often, but because we're redoing our storeroom, we put them on display for everybody to come and have a look at. So some of them are very old, and most of them are from our artists in the past, and that's why we collect them, but it's nice to have it all on display. Thank you. Here we are on the balcony, and this is a very special part of the building. I'd like to just make one comment that we were talking about Dame Nellie Melwood, a wonderful opera singer, and she spent a lot of time here. She also spent a lot of time raising funds for World War I, and it's been documented that Nellie would come up to the balcony here, and she would sing to the people below who would be crowding around and wanting to listen to her singing, and at the same time the other women in the organisation would be selling little mementos to raise money for the war effort. So that's the little thing about the balcony. It was originally built with gas. Now we have the little light gas fittings still installed on the walls here, which we might be able to see in a moment. But this is a lovely, lovely view, lovely vista of St Paul's Cathedral and the new buildings of this as the city grows. Yeah.
Eileen, with the current offerings that you have for the workshop, so when we think back to the 1870s when the Victorian Art Society was first established, it was based on mainly teaching tonal impressionist painting. Now it's changed. Obviously you've got a lot more progressive forms of art that are being taught in the workshops, even digital art is being taught as well. So can you talk a little bit about how VAS has become more modern in recent times, and how you're trying to cater for more progressive styles of art?
Well, I think the first thing we've done is we extended our education program And that enabled us to bring in other mediums of work and other art teachers. And so, of course, they all have their own different styles, design. And I think the thing is that this is what's giving the society a lift by having those alternatives which they didn't have before. You either came and had to paint oil painting or watercolour, and that was about it. So now we've extended out, we've broadened it. And the other thing is that I think that if we can just keep this going as we are now, we're filling in that gap which is missing in art education, because we can actually now employ good teachers. They're professional artists, as you've noticed. And this gives a good grounding for our school. Our school's very important to us. I know a lot of people think, well, don't go there, it's all traditional. But it depends on the individual. If you want to be a good artist, you really have to start from the beginning. First, you have to be a good drawer. You have to know your draftsmanship. And you have to know, if you're doing painting, you have to know how to mix your colours. And it doesn't really matter what your image is, as long as your colours are right. If your colours are wrong, you might be doing something that's quite contemporary, but your colours are wrong, and your painting's going to be terrible. Sure. So by having what we've got, and I think all of a sudden this is really being recognised now by the younger people, and a lot of them, of course, they're all interested in doing, which is great, creative things out of small things, you know, which possibly we'll start to do here. I don't know, we don't have a lot of space, which is one thing, but we're looking forward now. Our membership is growing, and people, now that we've done the building, all of a sudden they want to be here. Sure. I don't know why, but they do. They sort of feel this is an art community. You know, we've got 500 artists using this space, which is good. Sure. There's many little other art organisations around, but this really is the base now, and of course we've got that wonderful history. Absolutely, that's very unique. Yes, very unique. So we are going forward. Sure. So there we are. Come along, everybody. Sure. So I'm very excited about the future for the Victorian Art Society, Eileen. It's great that you're opening up to more contemporary forms of art and picking up the digital art and such. However, do you wonder that you possibly may be running the risk of losing the connection to the past, the tonerist painting? Yeah, we do. We've got to keep an eye on that, very much so. And how important is it for you to maintain the traditional values of the Victorian Art Society? I think that's very important, but we must be broad. We must have a broad perspective and look at it that way. We've sort of tussled with the digital art, introducing that for some time, but it's a certain skill to it, but it's certainly not like mixing colours on a palette, but it does have a skill, and it does have an attraction to the new medium, and it's certainly, you know, you've got your own iPad and away you go. So we've broadened now that we would accept that into exhibitions, but it has to be specified, of course, before it's exhibited. Sure. I'd just like to say something else, that the exhibition that's on here that you've seen today is from our permanent collection, which we mentioned before, and they're from all ages, all eras, I might call it myself, and you see different styles going through the eras. Now, this work here is not what people would want today, but this is just an example of our collection. And we will put it away again in another 2 weeks, and so it probably won't be shown again for some time, because the galleries will be busy. So we also introduced a contemporary exhibition about 3 years ago, and that's great. That's sort of drawn out a different group of people.
Sure.
Oh, they said, oh, this is good. We can do something,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
nice and colourful. So I think that our future's good.
Sure.
It's good.
Absolutely.
Lovely new website. They're picking things up on the website.
That's
things
right.
Are good, things are developing.
It's looking great, Eileen,
Yeah.
definitely. One thing that I would like to touch upon as well, Eileen, is I believe there's this perception that some people have on the outside that look towards the Victorian Art Society and come to the conclusion that it's a very conservative society
Yes.
with very traditional art values,
Yes,
and perhaps there's no place for them within this society.
Well, they
For,
do.
for people that have that mentality, what would you say to them?
Well, I think that that's gone. It really has gone. We're open now to everything, and it's exactly what you were saying. I've heard people say, "Well, don't go there because that's where little old ladies go to paint flowers."
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's not what's happening these days.
Mm-hmm.
We're now we're encouraging sculpture for one thing. We can have other little things like little displays. Anything that's put to us now we can cope with.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is that it's so lovely here because when we're not using these galleries, it's hired. If you've got a really contemporary or modern or something that you want to display, you can come here and hire
Sure.
these rooms.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no reason why we need to put it to that category anymore.
Absolutely.
Things out of it.
Sure.
But it still has that tradition
Mm-hmm.
of tonal realism and not heavy classes. If you look at our classes now, there's a great selection.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, I'm very excited for the future of the Victorian Art Society, Eileen, and I'm hoping that a lot more people come to get their membership and join. And if I can ask as well, how will somebody that's listening to this, how do they go about actually joining and getting a membership?
A membership where they can have a look at our website,
Mm-hmm.
which explains everything to them. Website. They can take out membership that way, or they can do it through the office.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Now, Eileen, for viewers that would like to visit the website, are you able to provide the address?
Yes. So the website is vasgallery.org.au.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for explaining the history
Yeah.
of the gallery.
Oh, you're welcome.
Eileen, I think it's a lovely place, and I really hope that a lot more people from the public can come and join, or even just come and have a look and get involved with this wonderful art society.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eileen.
Thank you.